Now, we're going to start the programme, though, with news that Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May is expected to say she wants the UK to overtake the US, becoming the G7's biggest investor in Africa by the year 2022. Mrs May has arrived in Cape Town and is now due to meet with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa later today. Now, her visit is part of a trip to a number of African countries. That's in an effort to try and boost post-Brexit trade. Last year, trade between the two countries in goods and services, that was worth more than $11 billion, with the UK being South Africa's second biggest trading partner in the EU. For Britain, South Africa is a key market. It is the continent's most industrialised country. It also has a growing middle class. The bank, Credit Suisse, now estimates it makes up more than 28% of the population. Well, with Theresa May is a delegation of 29 business leaders. They're trying to showcase the UK's expertise in all sorts of things, including technology, infrastructure and financial services.
It's lovely weather in Cape Town.
Her host, President Ramaphosa, was grateful Mrs May had brought rain to Cape Town after a dreadful drought.
No, thank you for your welcome.
And thank you for bringing the
rain. And he made clear he doesn't want no deal on Brexit, but instead...
They should conclude these negotiations in a manner that restores stability to economic and financial markets and secures jobs, not only in the UK, but also in our own country, as their exit also has an impact on our economy.
And they hailed Britain's first post-Brexit trade deal involving several states in southern Africa, who will now continue to have with Britain the trade arrangements they currently have with the EU as a whole. But the minister who signed the deal on the Southern African state's behalf told us it wasn't really about extending trade, but preserving it in the event of no deal.
What we can do for ourselves is to ensure that we have the right agreement in place should there be no deal. We are just preparing ourselves, whatever the outcome is. If there is a deal, then it's fine, our EPA stands. But if there is no deal, we are preparing ourselves for that as well.
Now, Sky News got into a testy exchange with the Prime Minister this afternoon when she was put on the spot over whether Britain will be better off after Brexit. Theresa May was speaking at the end of a three-day tour of African nations in which she confirmed Britain will pursue a good trade deal with the EU as well as other countries. Sky's Lewis Goodall has been following her trail and has this latest from an elephant pen in Nairobi.
Oh, Theresa May is definitely scarier than my friends here, Tom. They're starting to call me the elephant man around these parts. But yes, I did speak to Theresa May, the Prime Minister, again asking her that question, which you might remember I asked her earlier in the week, whether she thinks that Britain will be better off, whether Britain will be more prosperous, whether Britain will be more powerful in the world after Brexit. You might call it the elephant in the room, see what I did there? And in fact, once again, she didn't necessarily have the, how should we put this, the friendliest response to us. She clearly didn't really appreciate us asking the question again. Here's a flavour of, the Theresa May famous Theresa May death stare that I received.
I asked you the other day whether you thought that Britain would be more prosperous, more powerful in the world as a result of Brexit in the short to medium term. I know that you're going to say that you think there are opportunities. I know that you're going to say that you're executing the will of the British people. But I'd just like you to be quite clear now, in a yes or no way. Do you think that Britain, in the short to medium term, will be more powerful, more prosperous in the world as a result of Brexit?
Shall I go first on this one?
Exactly.
Lewis, I'm tempted to say, if you know the answer I'm going to give to your question, why are you asking the question? Because there are indeed opportunities, but we're also, I think what is important is a lot of focus is on the trade opportunities around the world. But what we see is global Britain, an independent Britain outside the European Union, working with countries around the world, working in multilateral fora, but also working in bilateral cooperation, not just to improve prosperity, but also to improve security around the world. And those are the opportunities that I believe are available to Britain outside the European Union. We're pursuing, of course, a good deal for trade with the EU once we've left the EU, but we will be looking to enhance our trade relationships around the rest of the world as well.
We're joined by even more friends here now, Tom. I call them hard Brexit and soft Brexit. But effectively, the Prime Minister, you're seeing there, refusing once again to answer my question, although she did receive a bit of a reprieve from President Kenyatta, the President of Kenya, with whom she was having that press summit. She almost, I think you could see a smile appear on the Prime Ministerial face. Why? Well, what else could make Theresa May smile but a joke at the expense of her former Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson? Here's what President Kenyatta had to say.
Last year, if you recall, the Foreign Secretary then, Boris Johnson, the bicycle guy, that one. Boris Johnson was here.
So it's just getting a little bit too friendly there. But as this whole trip draws to a close, what can we say about it? Well, clearly part of this trip has been about optics, perhaps even doing a live broadcast from an elephant sanctuary being a prime example. But she has been trying to chart and to show what a post-Brexit Britain might look like, that we can start to diverge into emerging... Oh, they're not fans of Brexit, these lads. They start to just herd and stampede. Oh, there they go. There they go. Off to the sunny Brexit uplands. See you, lads. What was I saying? Yeah, what's the thing about never working with animals? Yeah, essentially the Prime Minister is trying to show that she is not really running with the pack, that she's not running with the European pack like those lads there, that in fact she can try and chart that post-Brexit future in emerging markets. However, there's clearly not necessarily the case that has been borne out in policy terms. Why? Well, because many of the things that she's agreed this week, particularly, for example, with the economic trade agreement that she agreed with South Africa, are basically just extending things that we already have. And then when you look at trade overall, as we've discussed this week, the whole of Africa, the whole continent of Africa, has a smaller economy than that of France. It just isn't clear. Even with the most fantastic trade deals in the world, even if you could increase trade by 10%, 20%, 30% with Africa, it wouldn't scratch the surface for even a short-term blip in European trade, which is £240 billion every single year. And then there's also the question of this new scramble for Africa. You've got the Chinese hosting a huge Africa summit next week. You've got President Macron making 7 visits during his presidency already. Angela Merkel was conducting her own parallel Africa visit over the course of this very week. And the United States is interested as well. There's a lot of competition for investment opportunities on this continent. And the big question is whether Britain on its own can compete. Spoken to some people here over the course of this week, some business people who think that we can. Others who think that it's going to be an uphill struggle. And I think uphill, actually, is where those lads have just gone. So I think I might follow and join them.